Okay, this video is about Daniel's 70 weeks. That's prophesied in Daniel chapter 9. This will give a foundation for further study into Matthew 24 and 25. So I'm going to use the reference Bible. I might put it on the screen so you can see kind of where I'm going with this. This is the first or the sixth time in the Bible the word prophecy is found. Prophecy with a C is a noun, with an S is a verb, prophesy, just like advice and advise, or advice and advise. Okay, and so, but I think this is the first time the word prophecy is used when it is being described by the word. Okay, so if you read the chapter, go through this chapter, you'll see that Daniel, at the beginning of the chapter, has learned that about the 70 years captivity, and he's checking the calendar. He said, hey man, we're about done, we're done. And actually they are done because it says the first year of Darius. And so then he's confessing, okay, from verse 3 clear down to verse 19. And when we get down to 18 or 19 in particular, boy, he is really confessing. And then Gabriel happens to show up, and Daniel asked him about a vision that he had, okay, where Gabriel says to Daniel, he says, thou art greatly beloved. Now, wouldn't that be quite a statement from an angel from heaven? Gabriel shows up, he's usually given wisdom, and Michael shows up, he's usually displaying strength. He's like the angel, the archangel over the strong angels, the fighting angels. And then Gabriel is like the archangel over the wise angels. You get a common saying here, the gift of gab. Okay, so, but Gabriel said to Daniel, you are greatly beloved. And then he says that he's come so he can understand the matter and consider the vision. Okay, so Gabriel is getting, shall we say, his interpretation from heaven. Okay, so he's going to explain this to Daniel. And we have a wonderful opportunity to read what he said. Okay, he says here, 70 weeks are determined upon thy people, upon thy holy city. Okay, we'll stop there. 70 weeks. Now, we do have an advantage of hindsight here, where it's not dealing with 70 sets of 7 days. Okay, where Jacob served Laban for 7 years in order to get Rachel, and then he hoodwinked him, and then it mentioned another 7 years, and then the word Jacob says it was like a week. So in this idea, the word week is dealing with 70 sets of years. 70 sets of 7 years, totaling 490 years, where the Lord summarized it and possibly made a common saying that you got to forgive until 70 times 7. Okay, so that's what he was telling the apostles, 70 times 7. So we have hindsight to verify this, but 70 weeks, now notice what it says, are determined upon thy people, upon thy holy city. Now this is something that's so clear, so obvious, and if you get this down pat, it will help you overcome deceptions where people, Christians, actually think they're going into tribulation. Now, if they want to go, that's fine with me. I don't care. I know I'm not going. Okay, who is identified to be thy people? Okay, well, if you go back in the context, because a text without a context is a pretext, a pretense. You'll see in verse 15, it says, O Lord our God, that hast brought thy people forth out of the land of Egypt. Now, I've been in Egypt once. Okay, but, okay, thy people. Okay, then you read down in verse 16, you'll see Jerusalem and thy people. That's pretty strong hint. I dare say you're kind of figuring it out if you are with me. And let's see, in verse 19, "O my God, for thy city and thy people." And then up there in verse 20, "Whilst I was speaking and praying and confessing my sin and the sin of my people Israel." Okay, that's a no-brainer. About the only ones that miss that are people who got to add words to the Bible, maybe run to Strong's Concordance, try to overcome that, run to the Hebrew, well, obviously, 70 weeks are determined upon thy people. So obviously, that's Israel. That is clear. That's obvious. Don't forget that. So if somebody tells you that, Christians are going into tribulation, smile, enjoy yourself. Because thy people, that 70th week, is about Israel. Okay, and upon thy holy city. Okay, let's go back into context. In the middle of verse 16, thy city, Jerusalem. In a little later in verse 16, Jerusalem and thy people. Okay, in the middle of verse 18, or maybe about 39.5% through there, and the city, which is called by thy name, J, short for Jehovah. Okay, city, Jerusalem. Oh, yeah. Let's see, 19 doesn't say it. 20, does it say it in 20? Nope, 20. And then he's going to give us a little added verification in case you missed it. Okay, when you come down to verse 27, where he says sacrifice and oblation in verse 27, and in verse 26, destroy the city and the sanctuary. So is that not a no-brainer? 70 weeks are determined upon thy people Israel, upon thy holy city Jerusalem. Not Washington, D.C., not the Vatican, not Mecca, not Salt Lake City, not Springfield, Missouri. That's Israel and Jerusalem. Please don't forget it. That is obvious. That is clear. That is dogmatic. The context verifies it. You say, well, I think thy people could be the church. Well, you can think it all you want, pretend all you want, but you have zero authority within this context. You can run off and get a little fan club behind you, but enjoy it while you got it. 70 weeks are determined upon thy people and upon thy holy city. Okay, so to finish. Okay, here's from the rest of the verse gives 6 or 7 characteristics that's going to reveal the end of these 70 weeks. Okay, so to finish the transgression, to make an end of sins. Sins of who? Israel. That's foretold and promised. I think Jeremiah 50 verse 20 says that. And to make reconciliation for iniquity, and to bring in everlasting righteousness. That sure does sound like the millennium to me. And to seal up the vision and prophecy. Okay, that one, it's in one phrase. If you want 7 characteristics, you can take vision for number 5 and prophecy for number 6. Either way. And to anoint the most holy. Well, that's obviously the Lord Jesus Christ. All those characteristics will take place at the end of Daniel's 70th week and or at the beginning of the millennium. Okay, so we got 490 years described by the 70 weeks. Okay, let's see. When did this calendar start? Okay, in verse 25, know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the commandment to restore and to build Jerusalem unto Messiah the Prince shall be 7 weeks and 62 weeks. And then you got 1 week left over. Now, why in the world did Gabriel divide that in 3 parts? Well, you see, he went to the homiletics class in heaven and to learn how to preach, and so, or maybe he was the homiletics teacher, and he was telling them, you got to have 3 parts in a sermon, and a poem and a conclusion. Well, he divided in 3 parts. I didn't divide it in 3 parts. Gabriel divided it in 3 parts. 7 weeks, 62 weeks, and then 1 is kind of hanging here. Okay, so verse 25, when was this commandment to restore and build Jerusalem? Well, you go to Nehemiah 2, and you see that Nehemiah was commanded to rebuild the walls of Jerusalem. And then if you go into Ezra, that's when they rebuild the temple in Jerusalem by the commandment of Cyrus the Great. So we're dealing with 490 years in total, and he divides them into 7, 62, and 1. Okay, then he says this, the street shall be built again. Okay, you read that in Nehemiah. And the wall, Nehemiah, even in troublous times, Nehemiah. You read all that in Nehemiah, the trouble they had to go through. Okay, and after 62 weeks shall Messiah be cut off. Okay, cut off. Obviously, Messiah, Jewish designation. That's how the Jews referred to him. Gentiles probably would say Christ. Okay, so Messiah be cut off. Okay, so that's the crucifixion. Now notice, and after 62 weeks, including the 7th, he doesn't throw the 7th here, so the 7th is understood. So 69 weeks. This is how the wise men knew about the closeness to the birth of the Christ child. The star was just icing on the cake. They knew the calendar. The day of Palm Sunday, when all those people got together and they anointed or recognized the Prince, Jesus Christ, when he rode the colt, the foal of an ass. In the Old Testament, a crowned prince like Solomon would ride a white mule through the city, but a king rides a white horse. And so in Matthew 21, at the Palm Sunday, Jesus was the crowned prince. And when he is anointed the most holy, he will ride that white horse at the second coming. The Bible is so precise. Now it says, after 62 weeks shall Messiah be cut off. Now, it's often assumed that the 70th week is full set of 7 years. I'm not thinking so, personally, and it doesn't matter if I'm wrong. I think Monday, so Palm Sunday happened that day. That would have been the end of the 69 weeks to the day. So I'm thinking that Monday would be day 1 of the 70th week, Tuesday day 2, and then Wednesday day 3. That's when Jesus Christ was crucified on day 3, and then he's in the grave, okay, from Wednesday night, Thursday night, Friday night, and then Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and then in the after 6 o'clock on Saturday, the Lord rose up from the grave. So I'm thinking the 70th week, the sand clock is still going into the book of Acts because Jesus asked the Father to forgive them, and God did, so he's giving them a second opportunity in the book of Acts. And in Acts 2, Peter said, you murdered your Messiah. Acts 3, Acts 4, same thing. Acts 5, they said, are you telling us we murdered our Messiah? Yeah, you're not a slow learner there. Acts 7, Stephen came with a hot and heavy message, and again, he told them they murdered their Messiah. They rejected the message at that point, and that might have been when God took the sand clock of the 70th week and set it on its side. A little over 200 days maybe of that 70th week is gone away. So it says, after 62 weeks shall Messiah be cut off, but not for himself. Okay, he died first for God, second for Israel, and then third for everyone else. And the people of the prince, it's a lowercase p, so we know this to be the prince of the power of the air, the Roman prince, typifying the Antichrist. So the people of the prince, the Romans, they shall come and shall destroy the city, 70 AD, and the sanctuary, 70 AD. So that occurred in 70 AD. But then after sanctuary, you see a semicolon and the end thereof. Now, sometimes when you see that in the Bible, the Lord can jump a couple thousand years, a couple hundred years. We have an advantage of hindsight. And the end, that's a common 2 words in Hebrews and in Matthew 24. We'll see that again. And if you have the reference Bible, if you look at the word end, you got the little E there in the marginal. So if you go in the margin, you'll see Ezekiel 7, Matthew 24, Mark 13, 1 Corinthians 15, Revelation 2. There's more to it, but you got to kind of be selective in some of those. And you crisscross, go to those, and you'll find some more. So historically, destroying the city and the sanctuary took place in 70 AD, but doctrinally it's going to take place again in the end. And the end there shall be with a flood. That flood is described in Revelation 12. And unto the end of the war, that war is described in Revelation 12 also. And then possibly Armageddon, desolations are determined. This one maybe, that's the Revelation 12 one. Desolation so bad that Israel is titled desolate with an uppercase D. Okay, I mean during the pandemic, less and less people are on the highway, and it seems kind of eerie to some. But in the tribulation, nobody will be on the highway. Okay, and then it says, "And he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week." So here's this week hanging. This week is hanging here. And that he shall confirm the covenant with many. The many is assumed to be Israel, which it seems to be. The he, who is that? Is that the Antichrist or is that the Messiah? Well, actually, you can go either way on that. Okay, so there's some type of an agreement. And in the midst of the week, he shall cause the sacrifice and oblation to cease. So obviously, the tabernacle could be whipped up in just a day, and they can begin the Jewish sacrifices in the tribulation again, and then maybe put a more secure, more permanent structure. You'll find this in Revelation 11. Okay, in the midst of the week, he shall cause the sacrifice and oblation to cease, and that one, the he is most definitely the Antichrist. So maybe the he in verse 27 at the beginning is the Antichrist. That'd probably be the most logical. Okay, and for the overspreading of abomination, he shall make it desolate. It's called the abomination of desolation. I'll describe that when I go through Matthew 24. Even unto the consummation, and the determined shall be poured upon the desolate. Now, the 2 great ideas we need to keep in mind when you read this is never allow a complex situation to overthrow something clear. It is clear. These 70 weeks are determined upon Israel and Jerusalem. Never forget those 2 clear things. That means the church is not a part of it. Okay, this is called Jacob's trouble in Jeremiah 30 verse 7. So if somebody's going to try to tell you, a born-again believer, that you're in danger of going into tribulation, take the mark of the beast, smile. Ain't happening. It's not happening. And when they tell me that, some tell me that, I just smile and I say, well, you probably better get over to the nation of Jordan, in the Bible it's called Edom, buy some property, build up some reserves, some foodstuffs, because that's where you need to get. And they'll look at me, what are you talking about? And I'm like, what are you talking about? So it's clear, Daniel 70 weeks, obvious, clear. It's like the nose on my face, that it is dealing with Israel and Jerusalem, not America, Brazil, Mexico, Afghanistan, Africa, not Australia, not Japan. It's Israel and Jerusalem, not the church, not Christians. It's dealing with Israel and Jerusalem. That is obvious.